Hello, this is Dale. I'm joined by Mike, and we will be talking about Joseph Arimathea today.
And I assumed that we were in pursuit of the Holy Grail this evening.
As a matter of fact, yes, we are. Okay, so
Okay.
you may recall the movie, the Indiana Jones movie. Oh, that's popular. I never watched. Yeah, shut up. Okay, so look, he was not going after the Ark of the Covenant. Not in this one. It was after the Holy Grail. Okay, and you may recall the medieval story of it came up hundreds of years later that Joseph of Arimathea was the fellow that took the chalice that Christ had used at the Last Supper and used it to gather up some of his blood from the cross from Jesus. Gee, that's kind of
Yeah, that's a little weird. Did he
yeah, it's a
take a
little.
sip or two at the
I
same time?
gee,
Or
I
what?
I don't I gee, I hope not. Do this in
Yeah,
memory
it's
of me. And anyway,
right.
but the point was everybody seems to remember the guy that drank from the wrong cup and turned into a skeleton and all the rest of that. That really wasn't the point. That movie,
It
that
was for me.
Yes, that little scene made a big difference to me because when the bad guy had a chance, some of you are not going to know what I'm talking about. Just go
Oh,
along with.
I think most people at this point have seen that movie, which is probably 30 years old, at least at this point. I would hope
Okay,
that they've seen it. Otherwise, you just been out of the loop, buddy.
yeah.
Check it out. It's
So,
probably on
so,
Netflix.
so, but not while our show is on. Thank you. The bad guy, the baddie there, he decides, he says, well, which one of these is the right one? And so he chooses a goblet that's completely made out of gold and jewel encrusted. This must be the cup that Christ drank from. Are you kidding me? No, this is a wooden cup. That's not gold inside. That's wood. It's a wooden cup. His earthly father was a carpenter, right? This guy was not, highfalutin. Look at me, I have an imperial attitude. He was Jesus, right? He wasn't going to be drinking from a gold cup encrusted with jewels. Well, this is what tonight's show is about. This is the first of 3 Saturday shows. This is our intention. That's going to be tracing down the imperial attitude that we have among our county commissioners. Because for some reason, all 3 of them have this attitude like, you mean nothing and we mean everything just because Cheryl won by, what was it, 26 votes, 62 votes? It was a very small number of votes. Well,
Yeah.
I'm a big something or other. Really? We must be elevated above everybody else. Why? Well,
Well,
right now, because the cameras are pointed there, but why?
I thought maybe that you had uncovered some plot of theirs to annex Rogue River or something.
Yeah, today grants pass, tomorrow the world. Yeah, I get it. But my point is that um, we have said on this show before that if priorities were straight, the people around us are the real boss. These are just temporary public servants. What's with this high and mighty attitude? Well, we're going to show you what's with this high and mighty attitude. And now we've been doing this show, coming up not too long from now, for almost a year, every night. Okay. But, well, yeah, okay. Mike's tired because we don't sleep in between.
Yeah.
But we've also been doing this website, the one that Jan Ford insisted doesn't exist. That's really, I just, okay.
She must be thrilled that she is a regular feature on the program because of that claim.
She still says it. I still say to her, well, weren't you the one that said? She never done it. She just looks, you'll see when we show you a clip tomorrow. She's in the background and Keith Texas is,
Oh,
well, thank
listen,
God.
you're going to see her in about 5 minutes in the first video. She's in the first video.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting next to her husband.
But Keith Eck is saying something on this one we're going to show you tomorrow night. Like, well, thank God you have the ability to let's see. He combines God and the Constitution for free speech, and she's ha ha ha. Hey, you know what? Just be careful how much you invoke his name, okay? Please. And I don't mean Keith Eck either. So, yeah, she just thinks that what we do is basically hilarious. That's okay. We try sometimes. anyway, the idea behind this is to show you, one, how far that we've come with our technology. You'll see it's kind of difficult to hear some of this, and the video isn't quite as sharp. And also that things haven't changed very much with the commissioners and their attitudes about things. From where does this power derive? Really, that they can call people names, that they can be disgusted with them. Somebody comes up and gives them, cookies or something. They're like, you get away from me. You've got to take that over to somebody else. I don't accept things direct from, hey, simmer down here. We're going to chain off that area back there because it's terrible that you're, no, who do you think you are? We're supposed to be servants. That's why Mike and I do this. That's why we fund ourselves, because we don't want to be beholden to anyone except for you.
I want to be beholden to somebody. Give me some money, and I'll talk about your sandwich shop on every show.
Right.
Every show.
You'll be holding somebody after the
just
show.
Just as long as I have free sandwiches,
Right. Well, he gets free sandwiches. Well, he ends up paying.
Yeah, my wife
makes them for him.
Yes, she makes me a sandwich. She doesn't charge me anything. Yes,
right.
I'm so fortunate.
So we're gonna go straight. So we're gonna play stuff from 2 years ago tonight. In a week, we'll play stuff from 1 year ago, and the next week we'll play it from this year. Okay, that's how many there are.
The following week we will play clips from the future.
Right.
Yeah,
right. Now we have well over 1,500 videos in just the last couple of years. So you figure, when I started looking at this, I thought, well, this will be easy to find. It wasn't. What do you leave out? Okay, I mean, how in the world do you decide which ones to show and which ones not to show? Well,
you're going to have to start keeping a spreadsheet of these and make little marks about what occurred in each one of them and what its value rating is.
Oh, so many people will recognize this. Not only do we talk about them a lot, but they've seen these videos. But I was asked at one point by W4 semicolon space. What's the name of that group? We're for a constitutional government.
Yeah, W4 ACG.
Right. To please put together a list for them of the various videos that show this kind of imperial attitude. Well,
so here's your list, baby.
Yeah, here's some of the top videos from a couple of years ago. Go ahead, Mike.
Dale Matthews, Grants Pass. I called into the Commissioner's Call-In show on KJO the other day, and one of the things I mentioned is that there were people at the previous board, including Simon Hare, who had said that, well, on this previous levy, every dollar is going to go to law enforcement or to services that are going to keep us safe. And I said that the problem with that is it's not true that every dollar is going to go to that. And I mentioned that John Reedy had said it, and the chief financial officer had said it. And Simon Hare said, well, I don't remember anybody saying that, but I'll go listen to the tape.
I'm not going to stop you.
You are stopping me.
Well, then
why are you stopping me?
Let me explain. There's an element
Please
of
stop my
rules.
time.
I have the discretion to ask for her to stop the time.
I asked her, please.
I understand that, but we're still working on your 3 minutes. So you're going to let me talk?
During my 3 minutes?
Yeah. If I have to explain, the purpose I'm stopping you is to explain the rules. There's an element of repetitiveness that you come up before the board every time explaining the same issues. And that's not what we're doing here today. If you have a new issue, that would be fine. But we're not going over the same issues over and over again.
You are constantly going over the same issues because you keep talking about the levy, and now I'm talking about the levy. When you stop going over the levy or asking for repeated votes 5 times in 10 years, then I'll stop as well. So
actually,
one of the
things.
It's a
different levy, it's a different proposal.
Oh, I know, it's totally different, right, I get it.
So until you have something new.
I've got something new, thank you. And so you, Simon Hare, said, well, I don't recall that happening. Well, you were one of the people who said it. So you should recall. The other thing which is a little strange is if you were debating whether someone should have said that or not, really the question is, you're now saying the same thing. So why would there be any debate about whether someone said it? You should say, well, we're saying it again, and so we're proud that we're saying it again. Every dollar is going to go to, no, it's not. I'll tell you why. The ISF. ISF could stand for insufficient funds, but actually it's interfund service transfer, I think, or something like that. Anyway, the idea is that if any department that's funded gets money, they've got to share it with the departments that are not funded. They all have to do that. The more money you get, the more you have to share with the other departments. So it's not true that if you give money to the sheriff's department or to the DA, that they keep every dollar. They must, by your rules, share it with the other departments, such as the CFO's office. Now, why would the CFO get up and swear that every dollar goes toward law enforcement when her salary, which is more than yours, comes from the ISF? Any motivation there for saying something which isn't quite the truth? And if there was a problem with it being said this time, last time, why would you say it this time? You know, we now know that it's not true that every dollar will go to that. And the May ballot, which I think it's a good idea, it's called the May ballot because of the word may. This money may go toward all the things that are listed. It doesn't have to. And as you said, this is repetitive, we don't even need to spend a penny on some of these things. Those are your words, not mine. I suggest that people do not sign you over a blank check. I want the funding for these departments also, for the sheriff and for the DA and for the, I want that too. I want to be sure it's going to that. And as Cheryl Walker pointed out today in a meeting, she says, people are asking me questions about where the money's going to go. They're concentrating on the quality. No, they're not. They're concentrating on whether the money is actually going to go there or not. Based on what you've said, not even a penny needs to go to the things you've promised. Thank you.
Anyone else for 3 minutes?
This came up on with Mr. Matthews. For the record, I am willing to listen to any citizen's civil input for uninterrupted 3 minutes of time. I think that's what we agreed to. I have no problem with that at all. And as long as it's civil, if I want to try to impose what I assume is reasonable testimony, now that's something else again, it might be unreasonable by my standards, but it still is that citizen's testimony, and therefore I think I have an obligation to listen to it, as long as it's civil. That's my own concern.
Agreed.
You agree?
Yeah.
What happened to Keith Eck? He used to think it was okay to listen to people.
As long as they're civil.
Or even if he doesn't agree, really? You agree? So I brought this up because you don't have to put up with this. Why is he? The name of that video is "You're Stopping Me to Tell Me That You're Not Stopping Me."
Yes.
It's an imperial attitude. We'll decide when it's appropriate for you to speak. Why, you obviously don't understand the ISF. Yes, we do. When we voted that down, and we voted the next one down, and they said, let's keep it purposely vague. From us? We're the boss. What do you mean? You're just the servants. You're temporary servants.
Well, that's pretty standard fare when it comes to people that are inside government generally at some point develop contempt for the people that they serve. And so they feel that, you know, they're wiser than you are. And so they're going to be compassionate. You know, they're withholding transparency from you is it's an act of compassion, because you really don't have the capacity to understand what we're talking about here. So we're just not going to let you know about it, or we're going to be purposely vague so that, you know, you don't trouble your little head about what's going on. We'll take care of it for you. Don't worry.
That's one of the videos I actually took out because there were too many of them, where Simon had actually said, well, we could explain this, you know, which they're supposed to do. We could explain the budget to you, but you really wouldn't understand it.
Yes. Condescension. That's
wow. Okay. So here's a little bit more. This is from KJO Radio, of Simon Hare explaining, this is about the condescending attitude, explaining how he really just doesn't want to have to put up with questions about following the law. Play this one.
I feel incredibly frustrated when I spend this time week after week, and we constantly hear from the gnats in the room about things that are not the issue for Josephine County. We've got serious issues here, and it's probably being avoided because they are so challenging to overcome that it's much easier to focus on things like open public meeting law and the specifics on those kinds of things where you can throw paint or blasphemies towards people who are just trying to do the right thing. We are volunteers in the sense to come forward and say, we want to do something positive for this community because it matters to us. And for people to just constantly, like you said, come forward with just the no aspect of not getting on the solution train, what would you suggest we do?
Get on a solution train.
Boy, throwing blasphemies.
Well, the solution train, I guess, is in the eye of the beholder.
Well, certainly not in the eye of the gnats in the room, is it? The gnats in the room who bring up this irritating stuff about breaking the law. We've got serious problems to solve, not things that are happening here, things that are happening outside of here. You're breaking the law every day there. We don't need to only talk about what the sheriff is doing and arresting people. We want a positive solution? I got a positive solution right here for you, buddy. I don't think he's going to like that positive solution. Okay, it's not just the commissioners that are doing this. Brother, every once in a while, this is emblematic of the whole thing. We were just talking about this yesterday. Here is one of my favorite citizens who's got something to say about
This is a classic. There's no question.
It is about the attitude one should have about elected officials. Mike?
Rick Brown, 1415 Southwest Bay Street, Grants Pass. Honorable Commissioners. I call you honorable because we're honored by the people of this county by being chosen to represent us and to rule us. That's why I had my emails with honorable chosen ones. And writing to elected officials. The people who have chosen you, you are honored. So you must be honorable men. Are you not? And I think people should realize that this is not a free speech forum. This is a board meeting. And power is held by the chair to recognize people or not. It is held for the commissioners, you, to collect information from the public.
It isn't.
You don't hold it to be torn up and put down. And you don't have this meeting televised so that people can get up here and advertise their websites and their political views and hold victory speeches against you while not even bothering to recognize you, to speak to you. You're speaking to the public over this camera. And I've had about enough of it.
Oh, well, that's what changed my behavior. Yeah.
So I ask you not to recognize them, because you know what they will say, and it will not be any information you need to have. If they really think you should have it, there are, as you say, other means to get it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Miss Brown. That one was called Sometimes Fascism Wears Paisley.
Yes. It's interesting. She should have got a lecture or at least, an informative paragraph about what country she's in and how that operates, after that from the commissioners. But I find it offensive that somebody would say something like that in any government, forum here and not be corrected by them.
She was thanked for it.
Yeah,
He
she was thanked for it.
her for it.
Yeah, thank you.
We've chosen you to rule us. That's not
yeah,
the only time that she said that. That was no mistake. She meant it.
Yeah, silly.
Wow.
Silly.
Wow, we've chosen. And so, I appear on Bill Meyer, and almost every time I'm on there, Rika's right on top of me. That's not right. It's some other way, and it's usually the tiniest. It wasn't blue. It was blue-green. Oh, please. And he's like, what's your problem? And I tell him about this speech. We've chosen you to rule us. You are our honorable chosen ones. Whew, buddy. You must trust your politicians. You must trust your politicians. Okay.
Somebody was pointing out the other day how interesting it is that back in the 60s, the chant was, never trust anybody over 30, and you don't trust anybody's authority in government. In fact, you question everybody's authority. And nowadays, how dare you question authority?
It turns you into a Satan worshiper.
Yeah, that's how it is now. It's so weird, and now we need a similar revolution like we had back in the 60s without the long hair, I'm thinking.
Well, you can have hair as long as yours. I'm the one with the short hair now.
Yes.
So the next one is also yet another classic. This is where Simon Hare had said something at a budget meeting. And he had said something at a meeting before a budget meeting, and then I quoted him. And then he says, I never said that. I love this. When we're done with this little series of 3, we're going to come back and we're going to show you a series of the most egregious, I learned that word here, basically, times when you've got it on tape and somebody like Keith Echols says you don't have it on tape. What do you mean we don't? No, that tape is lying. The tape is lying? It's not really tape anyway, as you know. But anyway, this is a case where Simon Hare...
Well, actually, these ones are tape.
Well, they are, as a matter of fact.
They were tape before they got digitized.
Yes, that's important to this story. Anyway.
Yes.
In this case, I had the proof. Let's see what happened when Simon Hare was confronted by the truth. Go ahead, Mike.
Dale Matthews grants pass.
I don't like the math on that. It's padded one way or the other. It's not accurate.
That was Simon Hare saying, I don't like the math on that. It's padded one way or the other. It's not accurate. He's talking about the budget prepared by the Sheriff's Department. And he's speaking in front of the other 2 commissioners and the chief financial officer. He's indicating that he believes that the Sheriff's Department budget has been padded, as he says, one way or the other. Now, here's me at the 4th meeting of the Budget Committee on May 24th. He thinks that the sheriff is padding his budget. But you didn't ask him. That's not true, Simon Hare, or anything else. So I said, he thinks that the sheriff has padded his budget, but you didn't ask him. I'm saying to the Budget Committee, you didn't ask Simon Hare about that. And then Simon Hare interrupts me, although he's not the chair, at the Budget Committee saying, that's not true. I never said that.
Mr. Matthews, that's inappropriate. Can I ask you to stop with that? I think it's important that you do so. So in the future, just ask if you can do something like that, because that's really disruptive and pretty much inappropriate. I think your theatrics stop. Is there anyone else for 3 minutes?
Okay, Mike. So that's interesting.
Yes.
So this is the one I told you about when I got up to talk about what Simon Hare had done, and I was playing this back for everybody. I sounded a little tinny there. I tried to make a little clearer what it was I was saying, and Simon cut the power. Nobody at home could hear anything that he said or I said following that until he turned the power back on. And this is where the other commissioners got the idea of cutting the power when they don't like something. It's that imperial attitude again. Wait a minute. We're the bosses. And we've said this is what you've said, which is true, and we're proving it, And he doesn't like that being proven. It's disruptive, you see, to prove that he did not tell the truth. Disruptive.
Yes.
It's the core of some of our problem around here. So, okay. Now, the next one I think that you're going to find kind of interesting as well. At least I hope that you're finding this interesting. If a commissioner says something about you which is not true, is it okay to respond? Well, we already know what they're going to say, but here's a semi-hilarious version as posed by Simon Hare. He was the chair during all this period 2 years ago. Go ahead.
For someone to mix those two issues up is a definite misrepresentation to the public. Because my comments in reference to not being a hearings officer were specifically to that hearings officer ordinance. It was not to the two hearings that we had to do in a situation under the ORSs where livestock was chased by dogs. I have held those two hearings because there was no one else simply to do them. It has nothing to do with the ordinance that is proposed.
Mr. Chair, when citizens are maligned, may they respond?
No, Mr. Matthews, and actually you shouldn't talk unless you've been recognized by the chairs. You can do that by raising your hand like everybody else does. I'd like to add that there were actually a series of 3 hearings. Commissioner Walker chaired the last one and the second to the last one. I chaired the first one. We actually asked her to do the second and third. Specifically, she was just the chair of the second hearing and was the presiding officer, total hearings officer on the third one. We delegated that responsibility to her specifically because she's had that experience in the past, and it also provides for the appeal process to come directly to the board again. If the board hears the hearing the first time, the appeal process is to a circuit court judge, and that they're not real excited to hear these kinds of cases. It could take a long time for justice to be served while the animals are probably in custody, adding costs to the people involved in that case. So there's a number of different things. What I find most disturbing about sometimes what Mr. Matthews has to say is he's in the room, he's recording these. It's very evident what's going on. It's not rocket science. We're discussing several ordinances that have to do with hazardous materials on people's properties. Frankly, we've had a series of hearings on that and definitely a bunch of meetings. There's a hearings officer that's associated with those specific ordinances. These two anomaly animal control cases that we haven't experienced in probably over a decade require a hearings officer of the county. It's an obscure ORS 609.155 that requires us to do that. I'm not a hearings officer. I've never had any experience doing that other than that one case that I actually just chaired. The full board was there, so appreciated Commissioner Walker's help in that. Back to the point of you can have all the videos in the world, but if you want to mislead anybody down a rabbit hole, it's totally possible.
I'm being maligned again. May I respond?
No, Mr. Matthews. Hey, you didn't raise your hand. You got your 3 minutes, and you'll get your 3 minutes next week. So stay tuned.
Okay. Well, I didn't realize that. I mean, you can't raise your hand now and be recognized. I know that's
correct. You couldn't then either.
Yeah. So I don't know what that was about.
This is when we started calling it the Commissioner's Protected Time. This is the thing for which Sandy Casanelli got so much grief because she said, because it was happening all the time, she said, if the commissioners, and she was one of them, or a department head was going to get up and say things which are not true, completely protected from the public, isolated from their ability to respond, that we should have at the end of the whole meeting 30 seconds to say now, but what they're leaving out is this and this and this. Well, that's chaos. It's chaos. The meetings are chaos. They weren't chaos. You know what the result was? Department heads stopped doing that. They don't even do it today. They were chastened by the possibility that a citizen can say, you know what, that's completely false, and here's a reason why. The commissioners have their protected time, and anytime they want, they can say, well, you obviously don't understand anything. That's not true. I did these 5 things, and they go on and on and on, and we can say nothing because of their imperial attitude, Mike.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
I have nothing to add.
That's all right. All right.
If I weren't clear about that before. Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's just obviously the case.
Now, in this next one, this is one of my favorites. In fact, most of our videos, when we do this show every night, we often will put an accompanying video up so that you can see it all by itself. We had a guy just today that was saying, I don't really like it when you guys talk at the beginning. You know, relax. It's a free show. Well, you should only get to the story that I want to see. Which one of these? Okay. So what we do is we take videos. These are from the past. They're from 2 years ago. So we often will take videos and we'll put them up separately. You can watch them separately. You don't have to listen to what we have to say. Let the commissioners do all the talking, except when I happen to be there saying, hey, can I respond? No, you can't, Mr. Matthews. Okay, well, thank you very much. Or your time is being cut off and it's still running, and I'm now talking over your. May I speak during my time? No. Oh, well, I'm going to anyway, and your time is running. Hey. Okay, so in this case, Keith Heck was not happy that he was being caught breaking the law, because that's what he's trying to do. And this video all by itself got well over 1,000 views. People just thought his attitude about it was hilarious, and you got to see Simon Hare's little hop. As a matter of fact, if you missed it, I actually put the word hop. I felt a little strange about that, but I wanted you to see the little hop that Simon Hare did. This is the way the commissioners decided, until Wally Hicks got there, this is the way they decided to obey the law. Watch this. It's hilarious. There's still a quorum in the room. That's state law.
Well, that way we can, because there for a while I was having a little trouble trying to figure out points of reference, you know.
They're still talking about county business.
No.
I put them somewhere. I didn't like them hanging out. Look at it.
Can we have you something?
No, sir. Just
Meeting is over, I think.
Yeah, just waiting for the quorum to break up, sir.
We can have a quorum because we're talking about coffee.
Yes.
The meeting is done.
We're gonna put one right here, so we can buy it, we don't.
Oh, are you gonna leave?
We're gonna talk about it.
As soon as the quorum's broken, sir.
Would you step over there,
Access to believe.
Mr. Commissioner? Just step in my office.
Yes, you leave.
The meeting will be official over for this individual.
I can do that.
Thanks for all your considerations, sir. You've broken the law in the past, which is why I'm here.
What do you think about that, Mike?
Yeah, so that made it okay. Simon hopping into Keith's office, that breaks the quorum. I don't think so. I mean, they're all. I mean, does it say anything about a room that you're in? That I mean,
No.
I'm assuming as long as they can all converse with one another, you basically have a quorum.
Well, that's right. As a matter of fact, in a meeting following this, Keith was in his office. They were having a conversation in this room, and Keith was commenting from inside of his office.
Now, if they were on a three-party call, which we do quite often when we call a prospective guest or something, we like to discuss what's going to be on the show and how we're going to do it and all this kind of stuff. Would that be considered a quorum meeting if they were
As long
doing
as there's two commissioners discussing county business? You can have 18 commissioners discussing daffodils. That's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's the reason I kept taping, and the reason they tried to actually make a rule. And even their county council at the time, Steve Rich, even said, you can't do that because it says in the law, this is no tiny thing because they were doing this all the time. They would say the meeting is over and then they keep talking about county business. So they tried to make a rule. This was under Cheryl's the next year. She tried to make a rule so you could only start taping after the gavel was hit. And as soon as they said this meeting is over, you had to turn the camera off, even though they continued talking to each other.
Right.
No. So you want to take me away, go right ahead, but you'll be breaking state law. And as much as Cheryl hated it, even Steve Rich had to admit, that guy, that would be breaking the law. So it's really simple. It's so simple. Just when the meeting is over, go. And that's what they do now. It's actually had an effect on their behavior most of the time, not all the time. Most of the time, they don't talk county business before or afterwards. Now, when they talk county business, I can hear them doing it. They lock the door, and when they're done discussing before the meeting, then they open the door. Sometimes I'll walk in, and they're still in the middle of their discussion before they've called the meeting to order, and they're talking county business. It's illegal. Right. It's a small thing, but they just can't help themselves. Well, so it's part of that, you know it, imperial attitude. Okay, so this is one of my favorites. This is something that Cheryl Walker later said that they never talked about, they never did. This is all false. By that, Dale Matthews, he comes to these meetings and then he still doesn't know what's going on. My gosh, we never said any of these things. Play this one back. You're going to love this one.
The difference between a measure flyer and a voter's pamphlet is somewhere around $4,000. There again, that's an estimate. It might be $3,500. It might be $5,000. But it's going to be in that ballpark somewhere. In lieu of somebody writing a check saying, here, I want to donate X amount of dollars to financing a voter's pamphlet.
I just don't know if they can accept funds to fund this. So
I see the point you're making, because that's what occurred to me as soon as you said, because I heard a couple of people say, well, I'll write a check, and I'm going, hey, they're not willing to write a check for a lot of other things, but they want to write a check for a specific reason.
Right.
And the two that I heard comment about it were in opposition to the ordinances. So that does not, for me, pass the smell test if somebody is for or against something, anything that they are part of the referendum to get on the ballot, that they then come in and say, well, I'm going to pay to get this voter's pamphlet on there, which for the purpose of getting their opinion in there.
Well, of course, that's what they always do.
Yes. Buying preference, which would be the,
that's my concern is that.
That's my concern too, because I don't think.
The way the ballot title's written, that we paid to disseminate it through their money. And at the end of the day, if they lose, they say, well, we're going to sue the county because they didn't put in the right information. That the ballot title was misleading. And I put $4,000 into that, and I didn't expect it to go that way or something. That's different than somebody not liking the hats at the end.
Okay, so why don't you just have 9 arguments for it that pays the voter pamphlet? I mean, I'm missing the great contradiction here on prejudice. Yeah.
Well,
I can ask. I'll ask the director of elections up there. He'd be the guy that would know, but I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah, that's.
I see your point as far as it gives somebody with deep pockets the ability to get some inexpensive advertising, basically.
Hello.
So the guy with deep pockets hires 8 of those folks to write arguments for it, and she got the same end result.
Nobody did that. Now,
if anybody wants to campaign for it or against it, there's all kinds of ways they can do that. They do it all the time for other.
But we're just going to block facilitating it here.
That question, don't bother talking to
just say, no, we're just gonna do a flag off, that's it.
And
Any other type of advocacy necessary. You know, if you wanna drop $4,000 in this thing, it's not gonna be to get a voter's pamphlet, it's to do your own thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, but so what? So what? Listen, the elections office is being run. That's another part of the people's business. And if somebody wants to come in and donate money so that there can be a voter's pamphlet, which normally the county pays for, they should be happy. They can take $4,000 and throw it over into the ISF fund. Thank you very much for doing that for us.
Now, keep in mind, Art Harvey was sitting right there. He's in charge of elections. And instead of saying, guys, you know, you're full of beans. We can't do it like this. He's like, well, I kind of understand your attitude. You kind of understand their attitude. This was about the junk ordinances, the ones that went down by 80%. Cheryl did not want a voter's pamphlet. Really? Why not? Well, because people could put arguments against it. You heard her just say it. Well, yes, they could. So when they said we don't have the money, we've got money for a flyer sent out by the county extolling the virtues of the junk ordinances. Well, that's okay. But for a little bit more money, instead of a flyer, about twice as much, you could instead have an entire voter's pamphlet where everybody can, oh no, we wouldn't like that. Cheryl was telling people that she was being mobbed, really, with all kinds of emails from people she can't identify, of course, and at the supermarket begging her not to have a voter's pamphlet.
Okay, so which of these two things are the most moral in your mind? Somebody comes in and pays money so that there can be a voter's pamphlet with arguments for and against, or somebody using their influence from the inside to quash that. Which of those two things are, you know, I mean, if we're going to say that they're both immoral somehow, which one of those weighs more on the scale? I mean, that's hypocrisy.
So big bad Sandy Castanelli walks into the next weekly business session with $4,000. She got it from a couple of sources. And she said, here's the money. Boy, did they look shocked. They didn't think anybody would do that, right? And she says, we want a voter's pamphlet. And Cheryl's still saying, no, people are begging for no vote. Who are these people begging for no voter's pamphlet except from Cheryl Walker's imagination, right?
Right.
Parading it around town on their shoulders. Yay, no voter's pamphlet. Who celebrates such a thing?
And the other, listen, she just got done saying, well, the only reason why somebody would come in with their money to, you know, have a voter's pamphlet put out is so that they could help defeat this ordinance. Well, her push is to get the ordinance passed. What's the difference? These two things are the same. And yet once I mean, you know, you want to talk about imperial attitude. That's what this is.
That's what this is.
You know, you have one person saying, no, you can't do that. That's my domain.
Yes. We put a lot of pressure on the city council. The city council, yeah, because they had something on the ballot too. They weren't crazy about the idea of having a voter's pamphlet either. They weren't. But they weren't made up of these three commissioners. So they decided that they would fund the voter's pamphlet. Sandy got her money back. She returned it to some of the people that gave her some money. And we ended up with one. And guess what happened? People got informed. They read the pros and cons, almost all con against and they got defeated by one of the biggest defeats that anyone could ever remember, 80%. Well, Cheryl's contention that everybody loves this turned out to be mathematically impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So this next video will show you a little bit more about that. But the point is on this one, this was also denied that there had had anything to do with the $4,000. Why everything is fine. You can just go back to sleep because we would certainly support you. Watch this one. This is great.
But we do need a decision by the board to say no pamphlet.
Yeah.
Yes to the flyer.
No pamphlet, that's my vote. No pamphlet and a flyer. That's mine.
So you're done if somebody came in and said, well, I'll write a check for $10,000 for the whole pamphlet.
Yeah.
Not doing that.
Well, I'm done. Yeah. So even if that would be the situation.
I just,
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case when you arrive at a decision.
Listen to what Keith is saying.
Given a thought that
Anything gonna happen?
people from Mars
Yeah.
come down here and,
It ain't gonna happen yet. Okay. 2.
well, and so, yeah.
So let it be written, so let it not be done.
Okay, so what did Keith just say? Not going to happen. Ain't going to happen. Okay. Now here is later on when I do what you asked us to do, which is try to hold their feet to the fire, try to hold them accountable, see how Keith reacts to that. Go ahead, Mike.
The challenge, I guess, is out there. If somebody could walk into the office, say my office, with a certified check for $10,000, I will be more than happy to wage the fight to see a voter's pamphlet printed up.
Oh, really?
There are certain individuals who don't like that and shake their head no, and this
What you said in the meeting.
of pious arrogancy.
But we do need a decision by the board to say no pamphlet.
Yeah.
Yes to the flyer.
No pamphlet, that's my rule. No pamphlet and a flyer. That's
Two.
mine.
So you're done if somebody came in and said, well, I'll write a check for 10 grand for the whole band.
No.
Not doing that.
Well, I'm done, yeah. So even if that would be the situation.
I'm sure that's the case when you arrive at a decision that you've given a thought that
Anything gonna happen?
people from Mars
Yeah.
come down here and,
It ain't gonna happen yet. Okay. 2.
well, and so, yeah.
I will be more than happy to wage the fight to see a voter's pamphlet printed up.
Walker's staring at him like,
Don't like
What?
that and shake their head no.
What?
And this
I'm going to have to put my head down and write really fast.
arrogancy. But that's all right, bring the check up, and, I mean, anybody can say we'll pay for it, but, paying for it is something different entirely than venting one's spleen and their great vitriol.
You know what? He decided that it would look better to call the bluff of the people, and he lost. And they handed him
it wasn't going to
royal
cost
flush.
10,000. It was only going to cost 4. But
Yeah.
but Simon had said, he was the one that brought up, well, what if they bring in $10,000? No, never, no, I tell you. And then he says in this meeting, Heck says, well, if people came in with 10,000, why, of course I'd championing. That's not what you said. And so I'm sitting there shaking my head. Well, that's pious arrogancy. Why, you're venting your spleen. And it sounded kind of unsanitary.
Yes.
I was venting my spleen. Okay. And that was called, just because I'm contradicting myself, why are you shaking your head? Okay. Now, you probably remember, some of you do, a couple of years ago, Simon Hare had a little problem with the law. Simon Hare.
This whole thing is a lie. It's a fabrication.
No, it's all a fabrication, right? Simon Hare had been, he'd called in a vehicle report that said his vehicle had been stolen. Now, as it turned out, his vehicle was found within walking distance of his house. It still had the keys in it. There was nobody had broken into it, for as far as the police could tell. Grants Pass police looked into it and said, I'm not finding any evidence of any kind of problem. A lady had seen a fellow stumbling away, vaguely resembling Simon Hare, don't know.
Before he shaved his beard off or something.
Yes. And so there was a question. So the Grants Pass City Police decided, for reasons that they don't want to discuss, that they would stop investigating this after they had already talked to Simon's friends, who said the guy was crazy drunk. Okay, it's a paraphrase. Simon said later, well, my friends would never say I was drunk, but they did say you were drunk. Okay, that's it. That's what they said. And that he was slopping all over him, and he was hanging on to the guys, and he was, they had to take his keys and, tell him not to. Well, he got home somehow. Then he calls in a stolen vehicle report. So the police look into it. Now, I talked to the city police afterwards. Nobody wanted to go on the record, but they said, yeah, it really didn't look like it was legit there, bud. So they asked the Medford police to look into it. I got up at one of the meetings. This is the following meeting. And I read from the Medford City Police report. And the Medford City Police report came to the final police conclusion official police conclusion that Simon Hare had faked his stolen vehicle report. Faked it. Official. Now, did he pay in a court of law? No,
not
no.
possible.
Our local DA didn't want to follow through.
Imagine
Didn't want to. But the Medford City Police said that. So I got up at the meeting before this, and I repeated, and I read from the report. Okay. This is a thing that started into a whole couple of months of Cheryl Walker saying, you cannot read from a report because you weren't physically there. I guess it also means if you're a journalist, you cannot report that the president met with the families in Roseburg because you didn't see him meeting with the families, Mike Jones. You only assume that he met with the family. You can't report about a house burning down because you weren't there. You didn't even set the fire. I pointed out, just as a small aside, that I wasn't in the bar when Simon Hare did this, but I'm reading from the report. Let's see how they circle the wagons and shoot inward. Go ahead.
If there are other comments on citizens' comments, that would be fine. Yeah.
This is the second week that Mr. Matthews has come in and made some accusations, and more specific this week than last week, and by not naming an individual. And there are an awful lot of elected officials in this county who are he. You know, there's not just one he elected official.
You're okay.
Yeah, so, you know, that's kind of lumping all of the elected officials into one group. But I would like to say that these are spurious comments. By his own admission, Mr. Matthews says, I don't know, I wasn't there. So for someone to stand up and make public comments impugning someone when that person was not there, did not see anything, there may be nothing of this, and to make an accusation of elected official and he, when we have many gentlemen in this county who are elected, and I think that's inappropriate. And I would just like the public to know that I don't take this seriously in regards to content. I take it seriously in the fact that there are accusations being made by someone who never saw an incident, wasn't present in the incident by their own admission, and this is the second time making accusations, and I think it's very inappropriate.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And more to the point, it's falsely petitioning the wrong body. And it's just, you know, it's inappropriate. If you have a petition of the police department in any jurisdiction, you should follow up with that.
Petitioning anything.
Yeah, basically what I was going to say is that obviously that official, who shall remain anonymous, of course, because nobody knows who is being alleged to, that official would never respond in his own answering or in this kind of format especially.
He already did.
So he's sort of like, you know, shooting the proverbial fish in a barrel. It is always intriguing to me how people that stomp and holler so loud for facts and truth and all this other stuff have no compulsion at all of restraint when it comes to passing on allegations. This is under investigation by the Medford Police Department. Okay. If you have somebody that you know in the Medford Police Department that you want to call up and say, we'd like to get this thing followed through and finished, which I think everybody would agree with is a desire.
It was finished.
Okay, good. But to stand up in a public forum and to pass on allegations as if they are gospel truth is, it's offensive, and it's a cheap shot, which the individuals who do those kinds of things realize that there's no real rebuttal for it. And matter of fact, the more you rebut, the truer become their allegations. So it's a cheap shot, but I would expect nothing else from such folks.
Hey, thanks.
Mr. Matthews, until you're recognized, it's really inappropriate.
He's impugning my reputation.
I didn't realize that the name for mention.
Continue this dialogue, you will not have an opportunity to speak again. All right, any other comments?
Yeah, interesting that, you know, the more you rebut, the truer they well, stop rebutting then, for crying out loud.
He just said this a couple of days ago in the Courier, that when somebody says that Wally Hicks was involved in writing these new fire standards, why, to repeat that lie, I'm paraphrasing, is just the more you repeat it, the more people have a tendency to. He's doing the same thing 2 years later. I wasn't repeating allegations. I was reading from the police report. That's not an allegation. They had completed their report. The DA decided for reasons of his own that he would not follow through with any of this. What all you think? Well, he wasn't convicted in a court of law. Yes, he was. The court of public opinion said the police report's clear. The police didn't have any question. They're not going to write in there, we come to the official conclusion that this guy lied to us. They're not going to do that unless they're sure. Well, unless they're sure. Now, are the police always right? No. But I'm reading from the report. So I said nothing that was false. Okay, so the next one is kind of indicative of, you know, at some point here, the baton passes over to, and we're almost done, passes over to Cheryl Walker, and she decides to explain to Mark Seligman that it's offensive to people in the public to hear such a thing. It is? Okay, so here's Cheryl Walker's point of view about what's offensive to you.
Last night was an SOS meeting, second time I've been there. There's no doubt about it, the public needs to know, and the commissioners need to know. SOS will gather signatures for a future tax levy to raise your property taxes. Commissioners like Cheryl Walker will certainly be supportive of this.
And she was.
The fact that federal money will be coming to Josephine County to fund law enforcement. Citizens be prepared to vote no again. Either the county or SOS will put this on the ballot. Josephine County has not improved very much. People are still out of work. Unemployment's over 12%. Citizens will not want this either way, and I urge all citizens to be forever vigilant against organizations like SOS and commissioners like Cheryl Walker who will always want to tax you.
Mr. Chair, I would like to address a comment that was made by Mr. Seligman. Quote, he said, Cheryl Walker will support it, referring to a tax proposal that the SOS organization is proposing to put on the ballot. I've not seen their proposal. I don't know what it is. And for someone, anyone, to presume that I will do anything is not only inaccurate, it is inappropriate and certainly divisive and of course offensive, I think, to people in the public to hear such a thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's just offensive, Mike. Now, of course, she ended up doing exactly what he said. And the idea that she goes to SOS meetings, which she promised not to do when she got elected, and did it anyway. The fact that she went there and never heard any of the details of their proposal, I find that a little hard to believe, Cheryl Walker. Mark was right. This is back in the days when Mark was mostly right. And so what in the world? You can't predict something because you weren't there. Recently, we had, what was it? It was Diane Mackin. And I was talking about this meeting that had happened with the Republican Central Committee. And Diane says, well, it's just not appropriate for you, Mr. Matthews, since you're not a Republican, to criticize the Republican Party. So if a dog growls and bites at me, it's not appropriate for me to talk about that because I'm not a dog?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, I just want to tell you, I don't have pusillanimous dandelions for some reason. And I'm not talking in code or anything. I'm just saying that for some reason, I couldn't get that to come down for some reason.
I had a little bit of fun with this last title, and it's got a sort of mysterious title. Pusillanimous was actually something they mentioned in the meeting, but I was talking about how dandelions roar. Dandelions roar in ferocious defiance at the breeze. I hate you, you breeze! Like the guy that says, I hate your show. No, I never watch your show, and I hate it. Yeah, okay, yeah, sure, that makes plenty of sense. So anyway, just notice how Tony Correa is not treated fairly in this. He's asking a legitimate question. They give him a bogus answer. Then Jack Swift comes up and says something. It turns out that Tony lost his one and only chance to speak on something he wanted to talk about. And then Jack Swift uses the word pusillanimous for reasons only known to Jack. And then I want you to listen carefully.
Really like that, you know?
Oh, yeah, he did. But I want you to listen carefully when I have a reaction to myself. Keep in mind, I'm about this far from the camp. Mike?
Are you expecting me to play that video? Because I don't have that video. I told you that. That's what I'm telling you. I don't have it. It wouldn't download.
All right. Well, isn't that nice? I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Okay. So what had happened was Tony Correa got up and he said, I'd like to speak about this. Is that okay? And they were like, well, this may not be the right time. Oh, okay. You know, I'll go sit down and wait for the right time. Then Jack Swift gets up to talk and he says, we can't speak about this, right? Is this the only? Yes, this is the one and only chance you'll get to speak at all in this entire meeting. Well, Tony had just said, can I speak now? No, you need to wait till later. But it turns out that he would never get a chance to speak. And so Jack Swift says, I don't know why. Well, that's pusillanimous to do that. And then Keith said, oh, that's pretty funny. And then he says something about, you know, well, maybe he'll get a chance another time. And I said very quietly to myself, I'm right next to the camera and you can barely hear me on the camera. And I said, well, good luck with that. Real low is more like, good luck with that. Well, they're very attuned to what I say. And so Keith Heck lights into me, well, you may think that you can just say anything that you want to for your goofy show and your thing, you're using it, and you've got a microphone next to you. You could barely hear what I said, right? It was just closer to a whisper. And you just think that you can do that, blah, blah. Oh, wait a minute. What's up with this attitude? First of all, you can't hear me. That happened to me once with the Simon here. I was leaning over to speak to someone. I hadn't said a word. Yeah, you're speaking. And I said, no, I'm not speaking because I hadn't spoken. They're always convinced that I'm talking about them behind their back, which I do, but I wasn't then. And so there's all over me and all over some other people as well. Not quite as much as me. Where does this imperial attitude come from? You're the servants. See, if I had my way, they would get up off of their high thrones up there. They would come down to the floor. There might be 4 podiums, right? Citizens would get up and speak at one of the podiums. The commissioners would speak at others. We'd all be down at the same level. And it would have a sign in front of each of their podiums, servant, and a sign in front of just one last thing, a sign in front of the public's podium says boss. I couldn't get past it is the plural of podium, podia. Oh yeah, that's my point. Yes, the plural of podium is podia, right? Okay. So anyway, podiums. I think we need to drop this attitude that they have. I think we need to drop the people who are wedded to that. That's my opinion. Where's yours? Anyway, that's our show for this evening. We're doing very, very well. Thank you so much for telling your neighbors about this. It's obvious that some of you are doing that because typically at the end of yesterday's show, 75 views and 7 likes. So people are watching this. They are getting something out of it. And it's still a mystery to me that people say, I hate your show and I never watch it. So I don't know what's up with that. But we will have this same kind of feature next Saturday where we will be talking about what happened last year and then the following Saturday, what happened the year before. And then my favorite one of all coming up after that, where we're going to be talking about, we've got the tape. Here's J.J. Schofield, the HR director. He's sitting just a couple of feet away from Keith Heck. Keith Heck says his famous line about, disparaging workers. And then J.J. Schofield, the HR director, says he never said it. You're on tape listening to him saying it, and maybe you've seen the tape, and you're claiming he never said it? How can you even, what kind of That just doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, I think you're better off just remaining silent at that point. You know, I mean, if you know that's the case, you're just going to end up looking like an idiot. I don't know why this doesn't occur to people. Yeah, weird. Whatever.
It's so strange. Tomorrow night we'll be talking with Bree from Bree's Botanicals, and we're going to have just a couple of more questions for her that she knows. We've already told her they're going to be a little more tart than before. Just what's going on with this company that you have? Okay, this is good, but is it really true? And she's probably going to be able to handle herself quite well, which is why, well, we're going to do it anyway. See you. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for watching.